Hey folks, Doug Blake with Body Design University. In today's video, I want to pull you into chapter 11 and talk about the very first component here in chapter 11, which is the pre-participation screening. And this is a really interesting, I got it from a student that was asking me a question, and that's why I wanted to go over this to clarify exactly what the pre-participation screening is. Basically, the question he asked me was, I don't see the form for the pre-participation screening. And maybe some of you have looked at the same way and said, okay, I see where's the form for the pre-part? No. The pre-participation screening is an activity that you do with somebody before you do fitness assessments. Okay, back that up. Pre-participation screening is what? A pre-participation screen, right? Screening is just a way of assessing people, getting information, collecting data before you do something else with them. Well, the way it works is you do a pre-participation screening first. Now, there's going to be some forms you use to figure those things out, and you're going to come up with some information about that individual that will allow you to then negotiate the fitness assessments that you want to do or don't want to do, or how you're going to do them. Does it make sense? So what I was trying to explain to this one student was the pre-participation screening is not a form. It is an activity that you do. Hope that makes sense. So you have a pre-participation screening process. You have a fitness assessment process, right? I do things during the assessment process. So it's the same thing with this screening. And there are forms that NASM recommends that you use. So pre-participation screening, by the way, write that down. This is the memorization process. Look at it. Pre-participation screening is the general concept. And when I'm doing this screening, there's basically two things that I'm going to do in the screening process. The first one is do what's known as a health risk assessment, an HRA. Now, you're not going to find a health risk assessment form. Just like with the screening, which is this general concept that you do before you do assessments, the HRA, or the health risk assessment, is a subcategory of the screening process. I'm basically going to look at using certain forms. I'm going to look at your risk assessment, right? Duh, the whole point of the health risk assessment. It's a screening tool used to evaluate the benefits and risks associated. I'm just looking at the little box up here. So I'm going to assess certain variables and components that will help me then to decide as to whether or not I want to do this assessment, not do this assessment, right? Ultimately, fitness assessment. So there is a health risk assessment on page 343. And then if you shoot over to page 345, you're going to see the health history questionnaire. Okay, you get it? Before you do anything, you just signed up, you paid me my money, we're going to start training on Monday. Whoa, slow down. I need to do a pre-participation screening. Okay, well, what does that entail? Well, I got to do basically two things. I got to run a health risk assessment, right? And a health history questionnaire. So I got these two things that I need to do with you. But those two things are not forms that right? There's no health risk assessment form. Now, you could actually look for those, but I'm talking about what NASM is talking about. Okay. Also, there's a health history questionnaire that I'm going to use with you. Now, it just so happens that the health history questionnaire is an actual form that you're going to use. On the health risk assessment, you're going to use other forms. And the main form, so you got that. You got these two things: health risk assessment and health history questionnaire. Okay, so those are the two subtopics. Just so happens that the health risk assessment has a couple of forms that you're going to use. The first one is the PAR-Q, Physical Activity Readiness Questionnaire. You can read through that. It's pretty basic. The 3 bullet points at the top of page 344, easy to understand and memorize if you wanted to do that. Not particularly necessary, of course, if we're just talking about answering questions on an exam, but there are some interesting, beneficial pieces of information they give you in the critical boxes, right? Stretch your knowledge. And then on page 345, they give you an actual PAR-Q questionnaire. Okay, there are other things you could obviously use. NASM is being very conservative and basically saying health risk assessment, use the PAR-Q. Now, I guess in a sense, because they're giving you this one form, this one assessment form, I guess you could call that the health risk assessment form questionnaire, I guess. But they call it the PAR-Q, which falls under this concept of a health risk assessment. You would have your client fill that out, obviously, right? So you got that health risk assessment. And then the other one under the pre-participation screening was the what? Health history. Now, again, you could look at it as the health history assessment, and then you have a health history questionnaire. NASM just makes it easy and says that the health history questionnaire, or HHQ, which is side by side with the health risk assessment, is its own questionnaire. And of course, they're going to tell you a thorough pre-exercise health history questionnaire collects relevant information, such as, I'm on page 346. Now you have lifestyle habits. Now, look, here's the deal. Please don't be reading. Don't read the textbook. Don't read it like it's a novel. That's a waste of time. It really is, to be honest with you, unless you've got a ton of time. Go through this and write down the heading titles. Health history questionnaire. Health history questionnaire is going to ask questions related to lifestyle habits, and then just write down exercise habits, sleep, stress. But don't be reading through all of this and trying to memorize all this information. They basically give you some bullet points, occupation, and they're not going to ask you a ton of questions on these precision level pieces of data. Okay. Recreation and hobbies, those are in obviously their subheading titles. Medical history, that's the way you study this information, is make sure you get your heading titles. If you're going to read through this, try and just get a gist of it. Again, when I say don't read this like a novel, you're not trying to memorize all this information. Yeah, you can read through it, obviously, but skim through it. See if there's anything that you find of interest or that makes sense. I'm not saying it doesn't make sense, but the point is that under recreation and hobbies, recreation first, a lot of this stuff is unnecessary from a testing perspective. So medical history, of course, is going to give you some bullet points. Remember, as soon as you hit bullet points, anytime you hit bullet points, I'm not saying all of these are going to be on the exam, but bullet points guide you to those areas that NASM finds important to compress a lot of data into these bulleted points. So remember what I said. Big pieces of conglomerates of information get compressed down into bullet points. So when your bullet point is a paragraph, you got to compress that down to easier to understand or easier to memorize pieces of data. Okay, that's not the easiest thing to do. I get it. In some cases, like past surgeries, they're giving you bullet points that basically give you 2 words, 3 words, easy to memorize. Chronic disease, I'm on page 349. And then medications last. Okay. Once you get to page 350, now you're into the fitness assessment. So let me give you a little recap again. Pre-participation screening. That's what you're going to do prior to doing these assessments. What are the assessments? Well, that's all the fitness assessments that you are now going to read through in chapter 11. Very, very important chapter. Under the pre-participation screening rubric, you have these 2 things that you want to do during the screening process before you do any assessments. One of them is just to do a health risk assessment. That health risk assessment is actually just one form. It's called a PAR-Q, Physical Activity Readiness Questionnaire. Okay. Now, there is another thing you need to do in a pre-participation screening is to check their health history. It just so happens that the health history component is the questionnaire itself. Make sense? Health risk assessment, health history, but it's the health history questionnaire. Now you've got these 2 main forms that you have your clients filling out. In the health history questionnaire part of it, what kind of information are you looking for? Page 346. You're looking for lifestyle habits, and that's in looks like orange maroon sort of color. Lifestyle habits. Medical history. See what I'm doing? These are your subheadings. Medical history, and that's it. But under lifestyle habits, you have exercise habits, sleep, stress, occupation, recreation, and hobbies. That falls under lifestyle habits. Underneath medical history, you have past injuries, past surgeries, chronic disease, and medications. That's it. That's how you write these things down. Now, from there, if you have more time to study, now you can kind of delve in a little bit deeper into the information. Don't get stuck on it. And if you see bullet points, that tells you something. Hone in on the bullet points and make sure you kind of know and understand those. So again, chapter 11, pre-participation screening. I hope you know that chapter 11 is one of the what we call high priority chapters. So you definitely want to know this information for sure. But how precise, how in depth you need to know is going to be a little bit different. So don't read the book, any of these chapters, particularly this area. Don't read it like a novel trying to memorize everything you can about it. Do your main heading, subheadings, and then the other subtitles underneath that, and then whatever the paragraph headings are. Okay. Pre-participation screening, health risk assessment, PAR-Q, right? Health risk assessment, health history questionnaire, lifestyle habits, medical, I think it's medical history, right? Boom, underneath. And then underneath those are all of those subheadings, those paragraph titles. So I hope this was helpful. Remember, every Wednesday night, we have Quizlet Live, 6 p.m. Eastern time, 6 p.m., 6:30 Eastern time. It's a lot of fun. It will help you with your NASM study. Remember, in the description box below, if you have not done so, go ahead and click in there, because that's where you can get access to the full exam study that has all of the chapter level review videos, along with a audio textbook, audio book for every chapter, practice exams, practice quizzes, access to our private Quizlet study set as well. Everything you need to get you prepped to sit and pass the NASM exam. If you have questions, leave them in the comment section below. And by the way, if this helped you and you said, wow, this made a whole lot more sense to me, just type the word understood and let us know that it was beneficial to you. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you next week. Thanks. Bye.